4:16 a.m. A red line blooms across military radar scopes. It moves too fast to be an exercise. Deep underground, air turns dry and metallic, like overheated wiring. Somewhere above, a distant siren tests once, then keeps going. Phones vibrate at the same time in different time zones. TV screens wake up by themselves, switching inputs without asking. The alert tone is not loud, it is surgical. It cuts clean through sleep, through denial, through whatever you were dreaming. In a suburban cul-de-sac, porch lights flick on one by one. A dog barks like it knows what the sound means. A woman opens her front door, then freezes in the cold air. There is no explosion, no flash, just a pressure in the moment. In Washington, a clock ticks too loudly in a secure room. Every face in that room looks like it aged a year in 10 seconds. A binder opens, a protocol begins, and nobody says the words World War out loud. They do not need to. As the country holds its breath, where will Americans be when the grid begins to fail? Not when it finally dies, but when it starts to stumble. Because that is when most people make the wrong move. In that instant, the old world does not end loudly. It ends efficiently. The first trigger does not arrive as a mushroom cloud in the distance. It arrives as a cascade of confirmed signals that match too perfectly. Missile warning satellites see heat signatures rising. Over-the-horizon radar confirms trajectories. Intelligence channels light up with the same conclusion. Somewhere in the chain, a launch authorization is real. It is not a bluff, not a test. Hypersonic vehicles separate, gliding low under traditional tracking arcs. The math is brutal and simple. Flight time is short enough to erase debate. In the public world, the morning still tries to be normal. Coffee machines gurgle, shower water runs. News anchors read headlines that now feel like props. Parents load backpacks and think about schedules, not fallout patterns. Then, the information gap opens like a sinkhole. The government sees the board clearly, and the public sees nothing. Secure channels scream in acronyms, while civilians scroll rumors and broken notifications. Two Americas exist at once, and they cannot talk. The first visible civilian signal is the National Emergency Alert. The message is short because there is no room for comfort. Confirmed strike inbound. Seek immediate shelter. Await further instructions. It reads like a machine speaking through a human throat. For several seconds, denial is the strongest drug on earth. People look for loopholes the way drowning people look for air. A glitch, a hack, a misclick, anything smaller than the truth. It is the brain's last attempt to stay in yesterday. The second civilian signal is sound. Sirens that have not been used in decades begin to wail. Some are maintained, some are not. So the tones warp and stutter. The effect is worse than perfection. It feels like the city itself is panicking. At the federal level, the escalation ladder is already moving. Readiness levels tighten. Secure aircraft begin to roll. Continuity of government plans turn from theory into motion. There is a quiet, practiced violence in the way bureaucracy accelerates. The catalyst is not only nuclear. It is cyber, electronic warfare, and sabotage layered together. The first malicious packets hit utility networks like needles. SCADA systems freeze on safe-looking numbers, while reality drifts away underneath them. Grid operators watch familiar dashboards lie with calm confidence. Frequency readings look stable, but power flows are being rerouted and tripped. Protective relays behave like they are haunted. A few key substations drop, and the rest begins to wobble. Financial networks feel it next. Not because money vanishes, but because verification slows. Banks see abnormal authentication traffic. Fraud protections trip into lockdown. ATMs do not break. They simply refuse to give you anything. Gas stations become silent monuments in minutes. Pumps are modern, digital, networked. When payment systems pause, the pumps lock like safe doors. Drivers roll in expecting routine and roll out with empty hands and rising voices. Cell towers do not fall from blasts at first. They drown. Millions of devices slam them at once like a crowd pressing a door. Calls fail, texts hang, data stutters, Then the towers begin shedding load. The bars on your phone lie before they vanish. In the first hour, people still act like consumers, not survivors. They rush to stores for supplies they cannot define. They try to withdraw cash they have never kept. They drive toward family, toward work, toward anywhere but their own fear. Traffic becomes a trap, not a route. Lights at intersections flash, then go dark in patches. Drivers do not know who has the right of way, so everyone takes it. Horns turn into a language of anger. The highways fill with slow-motion mistakes. In neighborhoods, social order holds by habit for a little while. People wave, ask questions, laugh too loudly. They pretend the sirens are for weather. They say things like, "This will blow over," as if war has ever been a passing storm. Inside secure rooms, officials do not use words like maybe. They use probabilities, yields, and trajectories. They discuss blast radii in clean numbers that do not contain people. They talk about counterforce and second strike, like these are weather patterns. The first confirmed impacts, if they occur, are not seen by most Americans. They are seen as sudden loss of signal in specific nodes. A military base goes silent. A coastal radar station stops reporting. A high-altitude sensor saturates, then whites out. That is the cruel truth of modern catastrophe. You do not get a single clear picture. You get fragments, alarms, outages, and silence. The mind hates that kind of uncertainty more than it hates bad news. So it invents stories. Rumors spread faster than fire because they do not need fuel. A shaky video shows a flash that could be anything. A screenshot claims a city is gone. A voice memo says, "Multiple warheads confirmed." People share it because fear loves company. Meanwhile, the government's official voice becomes smaller, not bigger. Messages shorten, press conferences delay. Leaders disappear behind secure travel and controlled communications. To civilians, it feels like abandonment. In reality, it is continuity. The first civilian deaths are not from blast waves. They are from decisions made in confusion. A driver accelerates through a dark intersection. A person climbs onto a roof to get signal and falls. A diabetic cannot access insulin from a closed pharmacy. Hospitals go into surge mode before the public even understands why. Generators are tested, then used. Staff are called in, then cannot arrive because roads are jammed. Emergency rooms fill with anxiety that looks like chest pain. Police radios crackle with overlapping calls. Not crimes at first, but questions. People report strange sounds, lights in the sky, men in uniforms. Dispatchers try to separate the real from the imagined, and fail, because both are happening. Airports become pressure cookers. Some flights ground due to airspace controls. Others take off packed with people who can afford tickets and believe distance equals safety. In terminals, strangers watch the same screens and read different realities. At the first 6-hour mark, the shift begins. The country stops acting like a system and starts acting like islands. People do not ask, "What is happening?" anymore. They ask, "What do I do right now?" The answers are not equal. In apartment buildings, hallways become meeting rooms. Neighbors who have never spoken now share flashlights and half-truths. Someone knocks on doors asking who has water. Someone else asks who has a radio. Trust forms quickly, and so does suspicion. In suburban homes, garage doors fail open or fail shut depending on their motors. People discover how much of their life depended on electricity. They cannot cook easily, cannot charge devices, cannot even open the gate to leave. The house feels like a machine that stopped. In rural areas, the silence is different. Fewer sirens, less immediate panic. But the same digital failure reaches them like a slow tide. Payment systems lag. Deliveries stop. The nearest hospital is far, and fuel is suddenly precious. The first major infrastructure collapse is communication integrity, not total communication. Signals exist, but cannot be trusted. Official alerts come late or conflict. Local stations repeat the same lines because they do not have updates. People fill the gaps with imagination. The second collapse is logistics. Trucks stop moving when dispatch systems break. Warehouses lock when security protocols fail. Even if food exists, it is stuck behind software and locked doors. Supermarket shelves empty, not from shortage, but from synchronized fear. The third collapse is electricity distribution, uneven and mean. Some neighborhoods keep power, others lose it, then regain it, then lose it again. This flicker is worse than a clean blackout. It prevents adaptation and keeps everyone on edge. By hour 12, the psychological environment is more dangerous than the physical one in many places. People who prepared feel vindicated and isolated. People who did not prepare feel betrayed and frantic. Both groups misread each other as threats. In cities, you can hear the change. The constant hum of modern life lowers. Fewer HVAC units, fewer cars, fewer distant engines. In some blocks, the loudest sound becomes footsteps and a far-off siren that never arrives. At the same time, military movement becomes visible in flashes. A convoy passes on an overpass and does not stop. Helicopters cross low and fast, heading towards secure points. People film them because filming feels like control. Behind closed doors, emergency managers start triage planning. Not medical triage, but civic triage. Which water systems get power first? Which hospitals get fuel? Which roads get cleared? These choices decide who suffers, and they are made in minutes. The phrase Article 5 appears on screens like a curse word. People argue about what it means without actually knowing. Alliances harden. Retaliatory strike options are discussed in NATO rooms that civilians will never see. The planet becomes a chessboard again. The markets are not crashing in a normal sense. Trading halts. Systems isolate. Some exchanges close to prevent panic, which causes more panic. People refresh apps that cannot load. A generation raised on instant numbers meets silence. The first night arrives heavy. If power is out, darkness is not romantic. It is a blunt instrument. Streets lose their glow. Houses become rectangles of shadow. The sky looks larger, and every distant sound feels like something approaching. In that darkness, people make their most emotional journeys. They drive to parents. They drive to lovers. They drive to friends they have not seen in years. They do it because being alone feels worse than being wrong. Roads fill with those choices. Many do not realize that the worst time to move is early. The first day is when confusion peaks and systems are least coordinated. You can drive into a bottleneck that will not clear for hours. You can run out of fuel in a line that becomes hostile. At hour 18, the first real shortage hits. Information that can be trusted. Social feeds are a wildfire of certainty and lies. Videos loop old explosions from other countries. Maps circulate with bright arrows and fake fallout zones. People inhale it like oxygen. Local authorities try to restore order with limited tools. Some issue curfews, but cannot enforce them everywhere. Others set up community centers, but supplies are thin. Loudspeakers on police vehicles repeat instructions that many cannot hear or do not believe. In some areas, the water still runs. That becomes a psychological anchor. Running water implies civilization still exists. When it sputters or turns brown, panic spikes faster than any siren. People suddenly understand how close they are to the edge. By hour 24, the first full day has passed. But it does not feel like a day. It feels like a long, continuous emergency breath. People are exhausted from adrenaline, and exhaustion makes bad decisions feel smart. The second day begins with a different tone from leadership, if any voice comes through. Messages become more specific. Regions are named. Hazards are described. The language tightens into instructions, not warnings. It sounds like a nation learning to speak again. Some places hear evacuation orders. Others hear shelter directives. The separation is immediate and brutal. If you are told to evacuate, you become a moving target in a stressed world. If you are told to shelter, you become a stationary problem with shrinking resources. Evacuation does not look like a movie. It looks like families loading cars with random items because they cannot choose. It looks like people leaving pets behind because there is no room. It looks like traffic moving in waves, then stopping, then boiling. Sheltering does not look heroic either. It looks like quiet hours in a small space. It looks like rationing water in plastic bottles. It looks like listening to a radio for 5 minutes, then turning it off to preserve batteries and sanity. In the background, the military posture changes. Air defense assets reposition. Patrols increase around critical infrastructure. Checkpoints appear on major routes, not everywhere, but enough to reshape movement. A nation at war begins to look like one. Cyber attacks keep biting. It is not one event, it is constant pressure. Emergency services see spoofed calls, power operators see phantom faults. Even when technicians fix something, the system is hit again. Recovery becomes a treadmill. Medical supply chains snap under demand. People who need daily medications become urgent cases. Pharmacies cannot verify prescriptions. Clinics close. Hospitals conserve supplies. A simple infection becomes dangerous because antibiotics are not guaranteed. In some communities, mutual aid blooms fast. People share generators, tools, skills. A neighbor who has medical training becomes a pillar. Someone with a hand-crank radio becomes a hub. These pockets feel almost calm, like islands of competence. In other places, the social contract thins, not instantly into chaos, but into friction. Arguments over gasoline, fights over bottled water, theft that starts small and becomes bolder. A person who would never steal in normal life steals because normal life is gone. Law enforcement is stretched, and the public senses it. Response times lengthen. Officers prioritize violent incidents and ignore property calls. Some neighborhoods self-organize watches, which can help or can turn paranoid. A flashlight becomes authority. By hour 36, the economy of the street changes. Cash becomes both valuable and useless depending on the seller. Barter appears in casual form. Batteries for canned food, fuel for medicine. People rediscover that value is a social agreement, not a number. The soundscape keeps shifting. Less traffic, more distant shouting. Occasional gunshots that may be fireworks or may not. Dogs barking because their owners are tense. A generator humming somewhere like an insect that refuses to die. If the conflict includes EMP effects, the pattern becomes stranger. Some vehicles run, others do not. Some electronics survive, others are dead forever. People walk around holding silent phones like broken talismans, pressing buttons that no longer mean anything. On the geopolitical level, retaliatory actions continue. Alliances declare support. Threats are issued through official channels that civilians do not follow. The war is happening in conference rooms and command centers, but its consequences are happening in kitchens. News becomes theater. If broadcasters still operate, they repeat the same limited facts. They bring on analysts who talk in careful language to avoid panic. The gap between what people feel and what they are told becomes unbearable. That gap breeds dangerous certainty. People choose a story and defend it like identity. Some insist it is exaggerated. Others insist the end is total. Families fracture inside living rooms over what to do next. The catastrophe becomes personal. Hour 48 arrives with fatigue and adaptation. People stop expecting rescue in the next hour. They start making routines. Morning water check, midday information check, evening security check. The human brain builds structure to survive uncertainty. Food becomes psychological as much as physical. A can of soup is comfort. A piece of bread is normality. People eat too much early because stress demands it, then regret it when they see how little remains. Rationing becomes discipline, not math. Sanitation becomes a quiet crisis. Toilets depend on water pressure and sewage pumps. When those fail, waste becomes an enemy. People improvise with bags, buckets, and bleach. Disease becomes a threat that does not care about geopolitics. Children process the new normal in fragments. They ask the simplest questions with the heaviest weight. Are we safe? When is school? Why are the lights off? Adults answer with lies that feel kind, until the lies collapse. By the third day, the country's map of stability becomes clearer. Some zones are heavily damaged, controlled or evacuated. Some zones are strained but functioning. Some are quiet, waiting for their turn. America is not one situation anymore. It is many. Radiation, if involved, remains the invisible dictator. People cannot see it, cannot smell it, cannot bargain with it. They look at the sky for clues that do not exist. They trust plastic meters if they have them, and fear if they do not. Weather becomes an accomplice. Wind direction matters more than it ever did before. Rain is not relief, it is contamination moving from air to ground. A sunny day is not comfort, it is exposure. Nature becomes part of the threat matrix. Government aid begins to appear in some places as organized points, not salvation, but structure. Distribution lines, medical tents, water stations. These places become magnets for desperation. Where desperation gathers, conflict follows like a shadow. Armed forces are not everywhere, but their presence is felt. A helicopter overhead, a convoy on a highway, a checkpoint with sandbags. These are signals that the state still exists, but also reminders that the state is now prioritizing survival.